Okay, Tom, thank you very much for joining us today for this conversation. Would you like to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Tom Gery. Um, I'm in my late 70s. Um, I've been a discussion leader with the Legacy of War project. This is the second one I participated in. The first was as a member. This was as a DL. Um, I've been to Vietnam in 68, 69 I was a volunteer in a draft of the for the draft. That's a long story, but I won't get into. Social worker for a professional career, married, two grown children, and now three grandchildren. And as a social worker, I've had a lot of experience interacting with people, working with clients, administrative kinds of things. So I was comfortable getting involved with um, this particular project and the role of discussion leader.
Great, thank you. That actually nicely segues right into the first question. What does it mean to you to lead a discussion in this program on dialogues on the experience of war?
Well, I felt a sense of responsibility um, to um, to the project, to the project creators who worked real hard to obtain the funding for it, and I wanted to stick with the goals and the mission, which was to use literature and humanities to help enlighten people and encourage discussion about war and, in this case, memory in particular. So it meant a lot, and it was, a little bit weighty in terms of feelings of responsibility to make it work and to be able to um, perform in a way without overstepping, the role. We were facilitators and not teachers or leaders in a sense, but um, and so go ahead. I think that's
Good,
about it.
great, thank you. What skills do you find yourself using most often when facilitating conversations in your group?
What was the very first part of your sentence? What do I use most?
What skills do you find
Oh, skills.
yourself?
Well, listening skills are primary. You got to really pay attention to what people are saying, um, and then use different techniques to um, help move things along, like reflective listening, for example, reframing what somebody has said to make sure you get it clear, to make sure you've understood what they've tried to communicate. Um, and then just, thinking about the preparation that I was working with two teammates, and each one of us would take turns as the lead discussion leader, but working in tandem with them and making sure that each session went smoothly.
Good. Okay. Do you face any obstacles in facilitating the discussion group? And if so, what are they and how do you navigate them?
Well, the obstacles would be that if you, um, how can I say this, that the pregnant pause, not so much an obstacle, but that what the topic wasn't catching on, the discussion wasn't flowing, and that was the three of us that were worked on that, and we tried to have ideas. In I called it my own little term for it was to have arrows in the quiver, so you could pull out an arrow and plunk it into the middle of the group and to stimulate conversation. But um, that didn't happen terribly much. Folks were pretty engaged in this project.
Right, good, thank you. So, how do you help create a space where people feel able to speak honestly, listen closely, and sit with difficult material?
Well, we had very good pre-project training, two full weekends of preparation brought with specialists brought in to help us get prepared. And one of the things was to create a sense of not create the sense, but to sort of establish a set of ground rules and respect to develop the respect for each other, lay things down that people knew um, had a sense of the boundaries, so that as we got going with this, people could share and feel that there. I don't think there was ever a time that people got into an emotional um, conflict in the sense of an acute disagreement. I think we had one situation where a gentleman, and as a discussion leader, I never, wasn't my role to find out why, but he felt that he just couldn't handle the content of the project. But there had not been, to me, a precipitating event that led him to withdraw. But I didn't know what was going on in his mind. But overall, it was the preparation for leading the groups and facilitating the groups was excellent. And that's, I think, gave us a foundation to make sure it was done properly and respectfully and with dignity for everybody.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I think that whenever you run a large public group, people join and they may not always understand exactly what they're joining. And so if someone stepped away, um, I think that's fine. We don't
Oh,
always, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
finish what we start. Yeah. Okay. What role do the group members play in helping you to lead discussion?
Well, what role? They have to be active in terms of their involvement. They have to be engaged. They have to want to be there. They have to um, do a little of the homework, the readings. There were expectations that they would have consumed the material that was presented for each session, um, the reading list, and by and large they did. And that they brought the work they did outside of the session to the group, and they were ready to share, and that's what helped to keep it moving.
Great. And then each of the discussion leader teams has a mentor team. What role do the mentors play in helping you to lead discussion?
Well, the mentors were key people in the creation of the project, so they knew intimately the mission, the objectives toward the goals that were trying to be that were outlined and proposed in the project, so that they could give us a sense of the direction to get it going. And in particular, one of our mentors had um, on the reading list. Uh, One of the works had been that person had been the author and knew it very well. Obviously, she wrote it, so that was a big help. But they were great guides. They sat in on the groups, and then in our case, they participated in planning, and then afterwards in a sort of little debrief, which we'd have after each group, and it was very helpful, very helpful.
Great. Thank you. In your experience, do you observe differences between civilians and veterans in these conversations?
I and that's a I don't know if I can I don't know how to answer that in that certainly the knowledge one has as a veteran in this issue and topic of war sets us veterans apart from the people who have not been veterans. But if the civilians had a strong personality, they were right in there in the discussion and sharing and discussing and being a part of it. So it I and the veterans tended to be older in this group. So I mean, and I think in our particular Thursday night group, the veterans were all men. So that the men and veterans, they sort of take a leadership role in a lot of things. So that sets them apart too. But in our case, in our situation, none of the veterans were overbearing individuals. None of them um, would have in any way overstepped or made assumptions or took on a superior attitude, anything like that. We had a good group.
Okay. That sort of anticipated the next question, which um, are there moments in these discussions when differences between civilians and veterans create tension or insight or moments of connection and understanding? So you've sort of said that there hasn't been any tensions between veterans and civilians in the group, nothing that wasn't, just part of a normal conversation. But how about were the conversations, did they create moments of insight or connection or understanding that might not have been there prior to the discussion? And if so, can you explain or give an example?
I got I have a sense that the civilians were respectful and deferential to veterans for the experiences we had, especially in a war zone. For any veteran, any of us who had been in a war zone. Um, so deferential and yeah, they were, they held in some esteem. I don't know if that's an appropriate word, but they held us in some esteem as people who had been through an experience that was difficult.
Okay. Is there a common thread that tends to emerge in the conversations that you're having? And do you think that thread is shaped more by the participants, the readings, or the discussion leaders?
Well, you're pulling back. I have to pull back all these different sessions since starting January. That's a tough question. Well, the thread, I think we've established the thread as being part of that theme of memory. We talked about personal memory, collective memory, meaning society's memories, national memories, that sort of thing. Um, wow, I got lost in trying to do an answer. At the risk of run it by quick again, if you could, see if I'm.
Yeah, you're right on track. Is there a common thread that tends to emerge through the conversations? And obviously, it's all around different types of memory, whether we're talking about the Civil War or the Vietnam War. And I just in any particular discussion on any evening, is that thread, do you think, shaped more by the participants, their reactions to the readings themselves, or the way the discussion leaders shape the session?
I think the discussion leaders we worked at sort of giving a direction to the group through a writing prompt or points that were offered to be considered. We've had 9 sessions. 8 of them had writing prompts that were posted, and then people had a few minutes to think about them and jot down some ideas about them, and then we focused on them. So the discussion leaders, with the assistance of the mentor, based on the program guidelines and project, the whole purpose of the project, really shaped the course of the conversation. And from there, every now and then we deviate, but we had some nice tools to help people bring it back into focus. It was part of the pre-project training, the so-called parking lot, which we use once in a while. And by and large, the group, they understood where they were going and what they were trying to do, and they stayed on track with things. It didn't deviate too much. And so I'd say it was the you know the prompts, based on the reading material, based on the project, and that's what led it through. The groups, the members were there to not to spin themselves off into other directions. They were there to participate and be involved, and they knew way ahead of time. I mean, the syllabus was laid out for everybody. They knew week session to session what was going down, and by and large, our membership stayed true to that.
Good, good. And it sounds like you gave them space to talk about the readings from their own perspective, but you gave them questions and writing prompts to help guide that discussion that kept it on track for everyone.
Precisely. That's exactly the way it went.
Yeah, great. How do our stories, how do the stories created in the group create memory and meaning?
The stories created in the group.
So yeah, it's how do our group stories create memory and meaning?
You're talking about not the membership group. You're talking about a
No,
social society's group
no,
society.
your discussion group. How do the stories within that group that have been told, have been shared over the course of these discussions, created memory and meaning?
Well, I think I can answer that as an individual. I think I received, I felt a lot from what some of the civilians, some of the younger civilians came to group for when they expressed that they were trying to understand the Vietnam War, particularly um, because they'd had relatives, either close relatives or a little bit more distant relatives who'd been Vietnam veterans and had experienced difficulty after the war. And they wanted to understand that. And that made an impact on me. That gave me, as a veteran, I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to the civilian side of thing, and that was impactful.
Okay. Then you've also just actually sort of anticipated the next question, which is how do stories change us? So you've just said that some of the stories that were told in this group by some of the participants trying to understand their relatives' participation in war impacted you. How do you think just participation in this group might have impacted the participants?
Well, how do I think it might have?
Well, what do you see week to week,
Week
or
to week and
hear,
session to
right?
session.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's a tough one. Um, there were a couple of, and I can't attribute it to who or what, when, but a couple of thoughts that people felt that the veterans had been through quite a bit, and I kind of hit on that before. Um, yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for that. I can't get into their heads in my memory. I can't recall.
Okay. Um, and this question might be equally complex. How have the stories shared in the program changed you or participants or enabled group cohesion over an issue?
Um, I think the cohesion might have come from learning, um, learning, especially the first part of this project where it dealt with the Civil War. And this includes myself, and I think it had an impact on understanding how much memory was influenced after the Civil War by specific segment of the population. In other words, the lost cause. I think that a lot of people, or that some of the group members, that was somewhat of an awakening. And 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 I don't think anyone contested that idea. There was I think people learned together and accepted it because the evidence and the proof and the material in the group was really good. It was well thought out and presented with, in terms of availability for the reading list and the information. So I think that had a pretty good impact in helping to establish the groundwork for what does collective memory mean? Um, how can memories be purposely forgotten or changed? So, and then the other thing, we were cautioned and really as leaders, as discussion leaders, you know, keep focus on the content of the program. Don't drift into current events. Excuse me. So much of the program content spills over to what's going on today with our society. And it was, sometimes personally, it was a struggle to not let it bleed into what's going on because there's so much parallel. Um, so, so I think that's the commonality. I mean, learning how memories are established, collective memories in particular are established.
Oh, that's really interesting. And so it appears that the readings actually really helped participants and potentially even discussion leaders um, access knowledge, understand, and potentially reframe their own experiences within this new understanding and the collective discussions that happened week to week.
I'd say, I'd say.
Okay. Do you think that there are some things worth forgetting? If there are things worth remembering, are there things worth forgetting? Or do even painful memories have a role in how we understand ourselves, history, and one another?
Um, are you back?
I am. Did
Okay,
I freeze for a minute? My
you froze.
apologies.
I was probably not
Okay,
more than 15 seconds.
are there some things worth forgetting, or do even painful memories have a role in how we understand ourselves, history, and one another?
I don't think there's anything worth forgetting. I think we learn from the experiences, whether they're painful or benign. And I think there's too much conscious forgetting that does a disservice to the population because they're not aware of some of the malign and downright evil kinds of stuff that can be a part of history. And if history's dressed up and glorified, we can't appreciate the dark side of things, and there is one. I mean, war in particular. War means death. Um, and we didn't get into this. Well, we did. I mean, we had an excellent discussion on at one point with a person who happens to be dealing with memories and the remains of soldiers and people left, and it fit right in with our memories and some of our readings. So, no, we shouldn't. I don't think forgetting should be a part of the culture.
Okay. Tom, how has leading these discussions affected you personally?
Um, well, it's been a positive thing. It's given me not that I'm a purposeless old retired guy, but it gave me some real purpose to be ready for, each session, starting way back in November when we were prepared for the trainings and then moving into the session. So it gave me a little bit of meaning, and I appreciated that. That was good.
Good. Is there is there a particular conversation, reading, or a moment for the program that has stayed with you or you think will stay with you um, when the program ends?
Um, the daughters of the Confederates, the daughters of the Confederacy, that reading was really impactful in terms of how purposeful they were at changing the story, how manipulative, how they pulled the levers of power, and how they derailed something that was starting out, the Reconstruction, starting out to be really a positive thing in our culture and society, and they derailed it and allowed that evil racism to continue to be a significant part of the culture. That had an impact. And then last night's introspection and review of Ken Burns's story on Vietnam was, and I had looked at it superficially in the past, but never really looked into the criticism and what was omitted, and that was kind of an eye opener too.
Okay. And what do you think was admitted? What is it about the way Ken Burns' piece might shape national memory that's missing?
Um, what's missing is that the United States of America has a dark side. Has an imperial um, sense of righteous, that they're going to do good, and they do it for malign reasons, and it gets into profit over people, and he left that out. He left out, he highlighted the exceptional, the American as an exceptionalism, and he um, left out that we were in there for, to perpetuate colonialism, to maintain a control over natural resources. Ultimately, he didn't. I mean, that didn't come out, but that's the kind of things that we were involved in, and it was the way he said it. It was a misunderstanding.
Mm.
That
Hmm.
the war was not a misunderstanding. It was the people that in power knew exactly what they were doing, getting us in it.
I've always had the sense that Ken Burns didn't tell the Vietnamese side of the story, right? Or the perspectives.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Um, what have you learned from the participants that you might not have learned anywhere else?
Mm. What did I learn from the participants? I don't, my life has been so involved with so many people as a social worker it wasn't a one-off experience stepping into being a discussion leader and suddenly, learning about people. Um, I They were just people. They were all unique. The more vocal folks were, interesting, their ideas, what they shared. There were quiet folks. There were folks that didn't, particularly add a whole lot. Um, and that was fine because everyone came for their own reasons. So no, I think it reinforced for me that everybody's an individual. Everybody has their own story. And whatever it is, it's theirs, it's unique, it's their tapestry. So
But it sounds like they could bring these individual tapestries or individual threads together and weave a tapestry in the discussion program. Do you think that's fair?
yeah, I think it is for yeah, that for example, the folks I think that came there to learn about a veteran's experience, they brought their needs, and I think they got a little satisfaction out of it. The veterans, they they probably learned a little bit about civilians. Um, I think last night was an example of somebody sharing, a veteran sharing their feelings about not wanting to communicate war experiences to their offspring because they didn't want their offspring to be involved in war. And I thought that was, and the person wondered if that was always the right thing to do in life. I don't know if he got his answer, but it was quite a revelation to me that he could bring that to the group and share something he'd sort of lived his life trying to accomplish.
Mhm. Good. Um, have the discussions changed the way you listen to people's stories outside of the program?
No, I love to listen to people.
Okay.
So, you know, given my experiences in life and my work life, I brought those skills to me, and I just love to hear what people are about.
Is there is there one moment from your time as a discussion leader that captures the value of this work?
One moment. Oh boy. Um, I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know if that's one I couldn't answer. I I can't pin down any particular moment. I could try to make something up, but I don't. There's one person who was very insightful and had, a lot of worldly experience and, seemed very wise. And she was impressive. It was a person, her insights and that was very interesting to see that experience and her willingness to share things. So that's probably the closest I can get to an answer.
Now,
I'm very quickly trying to review 9 sessions, and I really can't pinpoint any specific instance, but this whole project has been really valuable and worth every moment that was dedicated to putting it together and then to implementing and executing it. So I'd have to say, the whole gestalt was wonderful.
great. Okay, thank you. One last question, Tom. What do you hope participants carry with them after leaving these conversations?
Um, well, I hope that in a very basic level, I hope they have a better understanding of what monuments are all about, and how they shape memory, and that particularly monuments that are relevant to the Civil War and to the lost cause story, the reason why they should come down. And if they have any opportunity to voice a vote, so to speak, in a community situation, that they can stand up and say, "Hey, these aren't right. These particular monuments to General Confederate, is they're not right." Um, Understanding Vietnam veterans a little better for the civilians, maybe they got some insight there. about trauma and war. I could hope that they took something away from that, and that their own why they came to the group and participated. Um, they felt some satisfaction from their participation. So, I mean, I think it was there for them if they take it away. Um, so that's probably my answer.
Great. Uh, thank you, Tom, very much.